We're starting class number 83 of Faith and Calm. And so welcome. Tonight is Yud-Tes Kislev, the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. We're going to get to that subject, but first we're going to do a little bit about the Parsha, and we're going to connect those two ideas together because nothing happens completely by accident. And the fact that it's the 19th of Kislev and the liberation of the Alter Rebbe and the Rosh Hashanah, as we say it, of Chassidus, is connected very much with the Parsha. So I'm going to start with the Parsha because there's a very interesting portion. I mean, I titled this topic, who am I? The search for Jewish identity, and if you can't really be happy until you know who you are. Woody Allen was still is probably, if he's still alive, right? A very unhappy person because he was always trying to be somebody else. He was never right. You saw the movie Zelig. He was always impersonating other people. And then there was the Annie Hall, the famous scene where he was sitting at the table and he was, everybody was looking at him, and he was, they saw him as this ultra-Orthodox Jew. He wasn't dressed as that, but that's what he thought he was being looked at as the outsider. And the Jew always feels like he's an outsider. So this week's Parsha is very much that, because in this week's Parsha, the Jewish people get their name, Yisrael. And so something very important happens in this week's Parsha. We get our identity. What is that? So here's the story in a nutshell in the Parsha, right? We have Yaakov. He's coming back after spending 20 years with his father-in-law. Very difficult, challenging time. And Adam Aram, he comes back with 4 wives and his 11 children. Benjamin wasn't born yet. Benjamin wasn't born yet. And he was heading back to the land of Israel to see his father and his mother. And on the way, he hears that his brother's coming to see him. He's all excited. And then he's told, your brother's coming, but he's coming with 400 armed men. And he's still mad at you. And he was going to kill you when he left. And it doesn't look like he's changed his opinion at all. So Yaakov, of course, gets very scared. He sends gifts. He prays to Hashem. And he prepares himself for war. Then there's this mysterious scene, which I'll get back to. And then the next day, he greets Esav, and all of a sudden Esav is hugging and kissing him, and he's happy. And what happened? What happened in the between? He was coming. He was with armed men. That wasn't the party. They was really. And something massively changed. And in that mysterious night before, something very strange happens, which many rabbis are trying to understand. I don't think I've said this before, but I think it's a very interesting story. So what happens that night? So it says that Yaakov sent his family on ahead without him, separate, and he went back across the river, Yabok, and he was all by himself. And that night he wrestled. It says he wrestled with a man. It doesn't say an angel. It says a man. Some rabbis say it wasn't an angel. It was Esav's angel. Anyway, it says it was alone, and he wrestled with his man. He wrestled all night long, and finally, and he was wounded. The man touched him in the thigh. That's why we don't eat the sciatica nerve. We chop off that part of the animal. We don't eat it. And Yaakov didn't give up. He kept wrestling with him. And finally, the angel in the morning saying, "I got to get out of here. I got to go. And Yaakov says, "I'm not letting you go until you bless me." And he says, "Okay." He says, let me first ask you, what's your name? So Yaakov says, "My name is Yaakov." He says, "That's not a good name for you. I'm going to give you a new name." And he gives him the name Yisrael, and he blesses him. And then Yaakov wakes up in the morning and he's limping. And then the next scene is all of a sudden Esav changed. Now, obviously, this mysterious story that happened in the night is somehow got to be connected to the change in Esav. And also, it's a very important story to understand because this is where the Jews get their name. But the story doesn't make any sense. First off, it says that Yaakov is alone. Well, if he's alone, then what's this man doing there? If you're alone, you're alone. I'm sorry, you're alone. And there's nobody else there. This guy all of a sudden appears. And this guy is attacking Yaakov. For what reason, we don't know. What we do know But at the end, he asks, what's your name? No, wait a second. What do you mean, what's my name? You don't know who I am? You thought I was Finkelstein? I mean, why did you attack me if you don't know who I am? And Yaakov, he's asking for a blessing. You know, if people attack you and fight with you the whole night long, you don't ask them for a blessing. You just call 911 and you call the police, you know? I mean, you know, get rid of this guy. There's something very bizarre about this story that needs an explanation. And then, you know, he gives him he says, you know what? I'm going to change your name. What does that have to do? I ask for your blessing. You're asking me to change my name? What's my name? You know, why are you changing my name? And then Yaakov says, what's your name? And he says, I don't have it. I can't tell you my name. So, I mean, you know.
Why did he ask him for a blessing, and why did he change his name?
So that's what we're going to explain today. So this is what there are many different phases in Torah. There's at least 70 different explanations for every single pasuk. Some say the Arizal says 600,000. Each one examines a different facet because Torah is infinite. I'm going to bring out one point here, which I think is very relevant to Jewish identity. And the best answers are usually the most simplest ones. When we say that Yaakov was alone, we don't just mean a physical alone in this case. We're also talking about that he was really alone, that there was nobody else there. In other words, the only person he was wrestling with was with himself. He was alone. And that those wrestling happens at night when you're all alone. You're really struggling with yourself when you're all alone. What was Yaakov really struggling with? So we have to know a little bit about Yaakov's story. So we go back to the previous parshas, and we see that Yaakov, he was born. Why is he given the name Yaakov? Because he was holding on to his brother's heel. In other words, it sounds like a very nice little story. Probably they took a lot of pictures, you know, when he was born and said how cute, you know, this boy, he's holding on to his brother's heel and, you know, and so forth. But really, it's a very strange thing to name Yaakov, not for him, but because he's holding on to his brother's heel, meaning that he's trying to hold him back. He's trying to hold his brother back. He's not even named for himself. He's named because he's trying to grab onto Esav. He wants to be Esav. He wants to hold on to him. He doesn't want him. He's struggling with him. And if you think that's a strange story, then the next story goes the same way. Yaakov takes the birthright away from Esav, meaning, I want to be you. I want to take over your identity. I want to be your Bechor. And then, of course, he actually, when Yitzhak is trying to bless him, he's actually dressing up as Esav and pretending to be Esav, and he's trying to get into Esav's skin. And therefore, Esav is very upset. He says, you know what? That's why he's called Yaakov, because he's always trying to, I can't live. This kid is always trying to trick me, always trying to live inside of me. He's trying to be me. He's always envious of who I am. He can't be himself. And that is what the angel is basically telling him. He says, you know, your problem isn't that you need a blessing. Your problem is that you don't know who you are. You are identifying yourself by being someone else. You have a problem with your own self-confidence and your self-image. You are not happy in your own skin. That's your problem. You have to change your name. You have to change who you are. That's what your problem is. And that's what Yaakov was struggling with that whole night. He says, can I be happy with who I am? Do I always have to be somebody else? I have to be that friend of mine who's married and has kids and it is successful and is a good, Esav. Esav means a fully made person. In other words, there was a lot about Esav that was very accomplished. He was a good hunter. He was a good businessman. You know, to feel successful, I have to be Esav. And what Esav was saying, what Yaakov was saying to himself, in other words, the unnamed part of Yaakov was saying to the conscious parts of Yaakov is, you gotta stop limping. What is limping? It means you can't stand up straight. You can't walk tall. You can't be confident in who you are. You're not happy with your own life situation. And everybody has a different life situation. Not everybody is doing well, lives in Palm Beach, and is what the non-Jewish world says is successful. You have to be comfortable with being successful as who you are, because you are a success. You are a piece of God. You are a Jew, And therefore, you are right now successful, not when something good happens to you, when something happens in the future to you, when something, all of a sudden, something falls in your lap, because then you are always wishing for something else outside of you. And that's not healthy. So the angel was telling him something very important. And that is that you have to be comfortable with yourself. And this is the big problem among the Jewish people. That's why we get the name Yisrael, because the Jews over the history is starting with the Hashmonayim. We're going to do the Hanukkah story. We're trying to emulate the Greeks. And then the Jews in Germany were trying to be more German than the German. And Woody Allen is trying to fit in with everybody else. You know, he can't even be comfortable with himself because he really got the Jewish disease, the Jewish problem, which is, you know, we always are trying to be successful in the eye of somebody else, but he can't be you unless you know who you are. If you're not comfortable in your own skin, you can't be. And when Yaakov wrestles with himself and is finally successful in becoming Yisrael, then all of a sudden he can be friendly with Esav, meaning that Esav was only upset with him as long as he was trying to get inside of him and become him. I can't deal with him. He didn't even know maybe consciously what was bothering him about it. But as soon as Yaakov can be comfortable in being Yisrael, being himself, then Esav is also comfortable with him. And that's the whole idea with anti-Semitism. You know, the thing that makes the anti-Semites most upset with us and most uncomfortable with us is that we always are trying to pretend to be like them. You know, be comfortable as a Jew, be proud as a Jew, be proud who you are, and then you will be accepted. And Esav hugs him and he kisses him. And it's a big lesson for us. It's a big lesson in identifying, you know what, we have to be very happy with who we are right now, not who we're going to be, not that I need something else in my life. Yes, of course, we have a lot of trauma, we have a lot of issues and so forth. But the truth is they're a piece of God, and you have to be able to look in the mirror and be happy with yourself. When you're happy with yourself, other people are happy with you, and you're more confident and you're more successful. And all of a sudden, all sorts of good things start happening to you. But, partly is that we always feel like, I have to be always the loser. I have to be the person left out at the dance. I have to be the only one. My tombstone is going to say I am the ultimate loser because I was the person always left out of life, never having a full life, never having the kinds of things I wanted. Now, as long as we think that way about ourselves, yeah, you know what? Esav and the world is very uncomfortable with us because you're very uncomfortable about people who radiate that. So kind of is part of being who we are. Part of this lesson here is learning who we are. I'll connect this a little bit.
I have one question about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's real. I mean, I thought it was really his mother who wanted him to dress up and like Esav and have the blessing and take his birthright. I didn't think it really came from him. That's what's confusing to me about it.
There's 70 aspects of Torah. I'm pulling on one thread of the story, okay? And emphasizing that particular thread, but seems to be related. Because all the stories that we hear about Yaakov and Esav are all about this. First, Yaakov is trying to grab onto his mother's heel, and he wants to take over his role. And then we find out that he's trying to get the birthright from him. And then he agrees with his mother, and he does dress up, and he does wear that clothes. So, maybe it was initiated by his mother, but, he did it too. He felt that he agreed with his mother that this was a good scheme to do to get the blessing because it shouldn't go to my brother. I should have his role. So it's I think that there's something to this idea that that we're telling also a psychological story that's relevant to each and one of us. And that is, what? In order to be a full person, to be a Jew, you have to be comfortable with your own skin. You have to be comfortable with who you are. And you have to be happy, that, okay, stop looking at other people and judging yourself by other people and what they've got and how things are working with them. And certainly don't be comparing yourself to the Esav of the world, the non-Jewish, the Edomites of the world. Jews have to learn to be comfortable with being Jews. And that's what our name is. We're supposed to be Yisrael, the minister, the Sar of God. Israel is made out of the word, you are the Prince of God. And you know what? You are a prince of God right now. Right now, you are a prince of God. And that's what the Alter Rebbe said in his Tanya. And that's why he was arrested for 52 years. He was basically addressing an issue, 52 days, 52 days. He was addressing a similar issue at a different time in a different milieu. So this was now in the 1700s. And Judaism had basically Jews have this problem sometimes. We look at the world black and white. We see things as good or bad. I'm good or I'm bad. And many Jews were coming to the Alter Rebbe and he said, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to explain to you. But you know what? That's not really the definition. They're not just good Jews and bad Jews. You know, many times I'm out on the soyim. I'm doing, I want the people who live in Esrog. I want them to light Hanukkah candles. I want them to, what else? Purim. Purim, I want them to, what did I say with Purim? I give out gifts. Okay. And they say, Rabbi, it's for you. I'm not so religious. It's not me. And they're coming from an honest place. They feel that somehow it's, they are not a full Jew, or at least not religious Jew, and therefore these things are not for them. And it's coming from a feeling of, you know what, either I am like you, and those things are for religious Jews, and I'm not really, or, and I'm not a fake. So I'm not going to be a fake. And I feel like, it's either all or nothing. Either I'm like that, and obviously, honestly, I don't feel like that. I'm not excited about praying and doing, keeping Shabbos and other kinds of stuff. So if I'm not excited about it, how can I possibly do it? It seems false to me. And then there are other people who think, the other way around, that, that they are, and they're very hard to deal with, and so forth, because they don't know who they are. They say, oh, yeah, I love all this stuff. And they really don't. But you know what? They turn off their emotions and they pretend to be, and then you can't really talk to them. They're acting and pretending to be ultra religious. And there are people who are honestly through and through that religious, but there are people who sometimes you talk to and you realize this person is not real. He's just acting this way. So the Alter Rebbe wrote a book, the Sefer Shel Beinoni, the intermediary man. He basically explained that there are very few people who are just naturally goody two shoes and perfect people. Most of us have a lot of issues and a lot of struggles and a lot of traumas in our lives. And you know what? It's difficult, Sometimes it's a difficulty with our anger and we lose it. Sometimes it's a difficulty with, the opposite sex and we just can't control ourselves. Sometimes it's problems with eating, with other kinds of stuff. We have weaknesses. And somehow we feel that because I have weaknesses, therefore I am really never going to actually fit in. And the Alter Rebbe said, no, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to explain to you that wherever you are in life's journey, whatever you're going through, right now, you are 100% perfect in God's eyes, because God created people not to be perfect, but in order to overcome the struggle and to transform themselves. So when you observe yourself going off the path and failing, that's very good, because the fact that you're upset about it and you make plans that fix it for it is actually, you are at that moment in time more alive and more connected to God. And that is the ultimate connection to God. To actually feel an intimate personal connection with God can happen anytime. It's always now, it's always Hineni, it's always here I am present in my whole being right now with you. And that is what this book is about. It says he's the hero of the Jewish people, the Beinoni. The Beinoni is the person who is always potentially struggling with some issue. There's always something that you have to work on. There's always something that you're made aware of because you slipped up, you thought you were doing good, and now you're feeling sort of off. And the Beinoni is the person who actually is always aware of, always using himself. He's always connected with God, because he's connected with God because he's doing God's mission, which is taking the human part of oneself, working on that and trying to get closer to Hashem. That is truth. And it's not about faking, it's not about pretending, and it's not about thinking that you're false. So at any point in time, no matter where you are in life, no matter how much you're doing or not doing in Jewish practice right now, you can actually view yourself as a perfect Jew. That's what the Alter Rebbe does. You are great. You are a piece of God. You are working at it. You are working on refining a certain piece of this universe. And that's also something that we need to understand about ourselves and our identity. I'm not supposed to be somebody who's already finished. It's a complete picture and so forth. I'm a painting. I'm a building in progress. And I'm working on it every day. And every day I discover new things about myself that I thought I was already worked at, or that I didn't even know about myself. You know what? I can improve that. And you know what? That's the Beinoni, and that's the perfect Jew. That is the perfect Jew who's actually serving Hashem. And with this, I think we're going to turn it over to my wife. She has some more things to say about this holiday of Yud Kislev. I hope this was helpful. And I enjoy your questions, and keep coming. And
thank you. It's very helpful, because it's something that you can apply to no matter what you're going through in life. Really, so it's a wonderful, wonderful lesson. Wonderful advice. Thank you.
Emily said she couldn't come, so hopefully she'll be able to listen on online somewhere. Okay, thanks.
I hope so. Thank you. Yasher Koach.
So why are you limping?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi,
Okay,
Shalom.
hello. You know, the voice is not cooperating, so I'm just going to give you a little sneak preview of what I'm going to say next week. And I want to wish everybody the Rebbe, our Rebbe, Melech HaMashiach, he identified himself as Mashiach, or he hinted broadly that he's Mashiach and that the grave will have no dominion over him. Anyway, he called this day Chag HaChagim, the holiday of holidays, nothing like it. And so anyway, I can hear it in my voice. It's not going to work. So I think we're going to do it next week. But I'll just tell you, Yud Kislev tells us who we are, what we're all about. I'm just going to give you one point, and that is, there's an amazing thing. There's a medrash. A medrash is sort of like an allegorical explanation of the Torah, of deep concepts in the Torah. And the medrash says that in the very beginning of time, God made the sun and the moon the same size. And then the moon complained to God, and then moon said, Master of the world, there can't be two kings that share one crown. We're both in the sky, the sun and me. It's not right that we're the same size. One of us has to be the king. And Hashem said to the moon, great idea. Go make yourself smaller, and we'll hear from you. And so Hashem made the moon smaller. What is that all about? The moon relates to us, the Jewish people. And the sun relates to Hashem. And somehow we started out as a part of Hashem. But Hashem made us smaller in order to do an important job that nobody else in the world could do. And there's another analogy, and then I'm going to end with that. There's another analogy. Haskell Shimon once gave it to me, and I don't know the source. Excuse me, I'm going to put a lollipop in my mouth because my voice is going rapidly. Let's see, 1 second. Let me get the stick out of here. Oh, good. So, Haskell Shimon told a story once, also an analogy, that there are two businessmen, and they both had a job. They both worked in a factory, and they decided, you know what? We are here up in the office on the second floor, and we can't really see what's going on down there. We're not in total control. In order to make the best decisions, one of us has to go down to the ground floor and pretend to be a worker so we can really sense what's going on. So one of them volunteered for that job, went down, became a worker, or pretended to be a worker. But the only problem is he forgot that he was one of the bosses. And slowly, slowly, he thought he was one of the workers. That's also the story of the Jewish people. We are a part of God, and we are on an incredibly important mission. And one of the things is that we can't forget that we are a part of God. We can't forget that we're on a mission. We can't think that we're just down here doing stuff. So that's what Tanya is all about. Tanya is all about explaining to the Jewish people who you are, what your mission is, and how to accomplish it, even with the limitations of being down here. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to wish everybody. The official greeting is Lashana Tova Umasuka. It's a new year. It's Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. Lashana Tova Umasuka. Limud HaChassidus, in the learning of Chassidus, Uvadarche HaChassidus, and in the ways of Chassidus. In other words, you should read about who you are. You should learn Tanya, which explains who we are, and you should live it. So anyway, I'm going to wish everybody a good week, and we're going to meet again, God willing, on Hanukkah.
God,
Okay?
God willing. Thank you so much. And I hope you're feeling